It's 5 p.m. across India, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you the top stories from India and the region. I am Anil Thomas. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, how are you doing?
Hey Neil, good, thank you. It's 11:30 a.m. here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half an hour. More hurdles for an EU climate plan amid farmer protests. Macron and Lula's sub-deal and Baltimore Bridge investigations continue. First, the headlines.
New Delhi terms China's claims over Arunachal Pradesh baseless, says the northeastern state is an integral and inalienable part of India. India's Minister of External Affairs S. Jaishankar says Palestinians have been denied a homeland, underlines the importance of a two-state solution. Israel asks US to reschedule scrapped meeting on Rafah offensive plans. Tensions escalate on Israel's border with Lebanon. And Russia's doubts Islamic State hand in the Moscow concert hall attack. Death toll rises to 143, 95 still missing. Well, India on Thursday termed China's claims over Arunachal Pradesh as baseless. Addressing a press conference, spokesperson of the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, Ranveer Jaiswal, said that India has time and again made its position clear and issued statements. He stressed that Arunachal will remain an integral part of India.
China may repeat its baseless claims as many times as they want. That is not going to change our position. Arunachal Pradesh was, is and will remain and always remain an integral and inalienable part of India.
Meanwhile, the Indian Ministry of Home Affairs on Thursday extended the Armed Forces Special Powers Act 1958 in 3 districts and the areas following under the jurisdiction of 3 police stations in another district of Arunachal Pradesh for a period of 6 months. With this, the areas have been declared as disturbed areas with effect from 1st of April 2024 unless withdrawn earlier. The step has been taken after review of the security of these districts of Arunachal Pradesh. Shifting focus, the MEA spokesperson also reiterated India's position on Ukraine, saying resolution must be reached through dialogue and diplomacy and warring sides must be open to explore all ways to establish peace.
Our position is very clear on peace initiatives and how we look at the Ukraine-Russia conflict. We continue to encourage peaceful resolution of the conflict through dialogue and diplomacy and remain open to engaging all ways and means that would help achieve this objective.
Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Minister laid a wreath meanwhile at Rajghat in India's capital New Delhi today to pay homage to Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation. On Friday, the Ukrainian minister will hold talks with India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Deputy National Security Advisor Vikram Misri. He will also engage with members of the business community. Ahead of his visit, Mr. Kuleba said that Ukraine sees India as an important global power.
The aim of this visit is to strengthen the Ukrainian-Indian relationship. Ukraine sees India as an important global power with a powerful international voice. We are confident that close cooperation will benefit both our nations.
Meanwhile, he also welcomed India's participation in the reconstruction of Ukraine.
India is welcome to cooperate, to engage with Ukraine on economic projects now, and of course to engage in the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Well, moving on, Russia and Ukraine continue to attack each other. Moscow claims to have launched strikes on targets, including the storage points of Ukrainian drones. Meanwhile, Ukraine claims it has repelled multiple Russian offensives and launched airstrikes on Russian positions. The Ukrainian army attacked Russian military personnel and military equipment, hitting important targets such as the Russian air defense system. Following a spate of missile attacks in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Kyiv is tightening security in the capital area. Head of Kyiv's military administration said a city defense council would review the staging of public events and enhance security around large gatherings. The measures come as Russia launched several missile attacks on Ukraine. The Moscow concert hall massacre has sparked a blame game, with Russia now saying it was extremely hard to believe that the Islamic State would have had the capacity to launch the attack. It reiterated that Ukraine was behind the attack. The death toll has now risen to 143. 95 people are still missing. Even as investigators continue to question 8 suspects, one of them, Kon Islamov, has appealed his pre-trial detention. A native of Tajikistan, Islamov is suspected of aiding 4 Tajik nationals who attacked the city hall venue. Meanwhile, Russia has bolstered its security and is calling for international efforts to combat terrorism. The new security initiatives have led to tangible results, including the detention of a terror suspect in the Samara region. Well, a major European climate change plan stumbles amid all the farmer protest. Along with this, there is the deadlock that continues to exist on the bill, which could undermine the EU's global stature on the issue. This comes less than 3 months before the European Parliament elections in June. Oli Barrett is in London and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Europe's farming lobby shows its muscle. What's the way forward to support Europe's or Ukraine's food industry? Oli, where do we see this headed? Do we see a deal or no deal?
Well, Anil, the latest news is that ambassadors from European Union countries have reached a revised deal to extend tariff-free food imports from Ukraine, but with certain restrictions. And what that means is the agreement now goes to the European Parliament, and there diplomats expect there will be a push to add more restrictions. Belgium, which holds the European Union's rotating presidency, says the agreement has secured a balanced approach between support for Ukraine and protection of EU agricultural markets. But some EU farming groups and countries like France and Poland have been arguing that the measures need to be tightened to avoid making agricultural products uncompetitive. French President Emmanuel Macron has reacted sharply to troubled talks over a free trade deal between the European Union and the South American bloc Mercosur. On the last day of his visit to Brazil, Macron called it a very bad deal that he says lacks proper climate considerations. He also says it's outdated and needs to be reworked. Brazil, for its part, says it's ready to sign the deal. France has repeatedly expressed reservations about the agreement, saying that its farmers have objected to the prospect that could allow in agricultural imports such as beef that don't meet EU standards. The agreement is supposed to ease trade barriers between the European Union and the South American Mercosur bloc, despite that growing opposition from France.
I deeply believe that we need to rethink our trade rules in light of this advantage, which is why I prefer to put my foot down in front of this assembly. I have spoken out very forcefully to say that Mercosur, as it is negotiated today, is a very bad agreement. But I think it's a very bad deal for you and for us.
Earlier, President Macron and the Brazilian president launched a submarine built in Brazil with French technology in a program that aims to build Brazil's first nuclear-powered submarine by the end of the decade. Presidents Emmanuel Macron and Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva attended a ceremony in a shipyard near Rio de Janeiro to launch the third diesel-powered submarine built in a $10 billion partnership. The submarine program, which began in 2008 during Lula's previous presidential term, is a partnership with France's state-run naval group. And DD India correspondent Tony Waterman joins us live now from Paris. Tony, where do those pretty sharp comments from Macron on the Mercosur trade deal actually leave us?
Well, I think that it's quite significant, Ollie, because this is an indication that the French President Emmanuel Macron is still open to this deal, that it can be renegotiated in his mind, because he has been one of the sharpest critics of this free trade agreement. His biggest gripe is that farmers here in France and across the EU are being asked to meet these very strict, very high standards when it comes to climate goals, to reduce their carbon emissions by quite a significant amount. But these farmers in this trade bloc coming from South America wouldn't have to adhere to the same type of rigid standards. So the fact that he's even saying that this is a bad deal for both parties, but we should still be working towards a deal, is pretty significant. This is a deal that's 23 years in the making. It was approved in principle back in 2019, but it's been held up in the final negotiating process and the final approval process for 5 years now. And of course, this issue with the Mercosur trade bloc, which not only includes Brazil, but also Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay, has become a central theme to these farmers' protests that we've seen across Europe for the last couple of months. Farmers are very concerned that these cheaper products are going to flood into the European market, and it's going to undercut their incomes, their livelihoods. And so this is something that they've been ferociously protesting against for months now. And again, the fact that the French president says, let's renegotiate this, he's still open to this deal. He's really seen as the big stumbling block in getting this approved.
And Tony, that submarine deal, how significant is that for both countries?
Well, this is very big for Brazil, because this is a deal that has essentially been more than 15 years in the making. That original deal on those diesel-powered combustion-type submarines was agreed to back in 2008 between Lula, when he was president then, and also former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. So there has been this plan for France to transfer this nuclear technology to Brazil as they try to build their first nuclear submarine. But there's been a lot of disagreements over the years in the transfer of this technology. Brazil would be the first country outside of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council to have this technology, to be building these types of submarines. So it's a very big deal for them. Also a big deal for France, as it's trying to build up its own defense system, its ally systems, and its defense building here in Europe. So this deal, this is for one last submarine ship, which they hope to start building in 2025, which is just next year. Again, it's going to come down to the transfer of this very sensitive nuclear technology, particularly when it comes to the propulsion system of these types of submarines.
Thank you, Tony. Israel has asked the White House to reschedule a high-level military meeting on plans for Gaza's southern city of Rafah. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu cancelled the visit after the US did not veto a Gaza ceasefire resolution adopted by the United Nations Security Council on May the 25th.
The Prime Minister's office has agreed to reschedule the meeting dedicated to Rafah. So we're now working with them to find a convenient date that's obviously going to work for both sides. But his office has agreed to reschedule that meeting that would be dedicated to Rafah, which is a good thing.
The US says it believes that hostage talks with Israel and Hamas are not over yet, and Washington sees an opportunity to continue pursuing the release of hostages.
The hostage negotiations we do not believe are over. We do not believe they've come to an end. We believe that there is an ability to continue to pursue the release of hostages, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
India's Minister of External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, has said that the Palestinians have been denied their homeland. He reiterated India's support for a two-state solution to address the Israel-Palestinian conflict. He made the remarks during his visit to Malaysia.
On the one hand, what happened on October 7th was terrorism. On the other hand, nobody would, countenance the deaths of innocent civilians. Countries may be justified, at least in their own minds, in responding. But you cannot have a response which does not, every response must take into account something called international humanitarian law. And the fact is that whatever the rights and wrongs of the issue, there is the underlying issue of the rights of the Palestinians and the fact that they have been denied their homeland.
Spain has airdropped 26 tons of humanitarian aid into Gaza. The operation, carried out in coordination with Jordan and co-financed by the European Union, involved 2 Airbus A400 military planes dropping more than 11,000 food packets and supplies. The bodies of at least 2 of the 6 people, And I think that's it for me for today. Anil, back to you.
Thank you, Ollie, for those quick updates from London. Well, still to come on DD India Global. Seoul bus drivers end strike after city agrees to wage hikes with 4.48% increase and bonuses for 2 major holidays. Russian rock band Picnic returns to stage after Moscow terrorist attack.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour, from sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
You're watching DD India Global. I'm Anil Thomas. Commuting eased for over 9 million people of South Korean capital as the hour-long bus strike ended on Thursday. The strike was called off after a deal was reached between Seoul's bus union and its employers to hike the wages by 4.48%. The unions had originally asked for almost 13% wage increase. The full-scale strike by the city's bus drivers was the first in 12 years. Their last strike lasted for around 20 minutes. The 29th meeting of the Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on the Indo-China Border Affairs was held on Wednesday in Beijing. The two sides had an in-depth exchange of views on how to achieve complete disengagement and also resolve the remaining issues along the line of actual control in the western sector of the India-China border areas. In the interim, both sides agreed to maintain regular contact through diplomatic and military channels and on the need to uphold peace and tranquility on the ground in the border areas in accordance with existing bilateral agreements and protocols. The 10th edition of the India-Seychelles Joint Military Exercise, codenamed Lamite 2024, ended on Wednesday in Seychelles. High standards of professionalism and training were on display by the soldiers of both nations. India and Seychelles enjoy a strong defense cooperation. The soldiers trained, planned and executed a series of tactical drills for neutralizing likely threats that may be encountered in a semi-urban environment while exploiting and showcasing new generation equipment and technology. The 10-day-long joint exercise included field training exercise, combat, discussion, lectures, and demonstrations. The sea phase of a tri-service humanitarian assistance and disaster relief exercise between India and the US, codenamed Tiger Triumph, began in the Bay of Bengal on Thursday. The three-day exercise includes units of both countries setting up a joint command and control center and a joint relief and medical camp. A planning and coordination exercise is being undertaken to discuss and refine standard operating procedures or SOPs to enable rapid and smooth coordination between the forces of both nations. The exercise represents the robust strategic partnership between both countries and aims to share the best practices and standard operating procedures in undertaking multinational operations. The harbour phase of the exercise was conducted at Visakhapatnam last week. The Israel Aerospace Industries announced on Thursday that it had opened its Indian subsidiary in New Delhi. The opening of Aerospace Services India is seen as a demonstration of the Israeli aerospace and defense company's strong collaboration with the Indian government. India's self-reliant and Make in India initiatives get more support with this. The Israeli company boasts of a workforce of around 50 employees, with 97% being Indian nationals. It trades in the Indian currency, rupee. Well, let's take a look at some other stories making news around the world. Fiji's former Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama is discharged from court on Thursday after being convicted last week for perverting the course of justice. In Fiji, an absolute discharge in the lowest level sentence that an offender can get. It means that no conviction is registered against Bainimarama. He led Fiji for 16 years and came to power in a 2006 coup and later won democratic elections in 2014 and 18. Dozens of anti-mining protesters held a sit-in outside Ecuador's capital Quito as tensions continue over mining rights. The demonstration took place to oppose government's plan to pave the way for the mining of gold, silver and copper. Ecuador has been under a state of emergency since January to quell a wave of gang violence. Thousands joined hands on Wednesday to form a human chain at Nashville in the U.S. state of Tennessee and remember the victims of an elementary school shooting 1 year on. Last March, a 28-year-old former student stormed into a private convent school with rifles and killed 3 9-year-old children along with 3 staff members. The shooting prompted cries for gun control and led to large protests in the state capital. Following several years of Ramadan coinciding with the sweltering Saudi summer, the capital Riyadh residents were happy to witness cool weather during this year's holy month. With temperatures in the range of 20 degrees Celsius, Saudis were seen strolling and dining outside. While a Soviet-era Russian rock band Picnic, whose concert in the Crocus City Hall near Moscow last week was attacked by gunmen, staged a memorial show in St. Petersburg on Wednesday. The veteran band Picnic received a standing ovation at the memorial concert. Initially, band members were thinking of cancelling the Wednesday gig, but it took place after all, with the band saying that all the money will be donated to the victims of the deadly attack.
Спасибо.
Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Global, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.com. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Anil Thomas from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global.